Good evening, everyone. I'm Regina, occupational therapist from Malacca General Hospital. I'm privileged to chairing this session, special lecture, with the title Aging with Disability. We often heard talks on aging or rehabilitation or people with disabilities. From the rehabilitation fraternity itself, we often overlook the topic on aging with disabilities. So today we have a special guest, a distinguished speaker. Someone is very well known to most of you, Madam Padmawati. She is active advocate on the rights of persons with disabilities in Malaysia for the last 44 years, using a wheelchair since the age of 21 after an accident in 1975 that left her paralyzed from waist down, which did not deter her from completing her studies and seeking employment. After graduating from UM in 1978, she worked as a librarian at UM Library from 1979. She pursued her master's in library science in 1981 and served as UM librarian until 2014. She has presented several papers in seminars, conferences, both locally and overseas, on issues pertaining to disability. Her work also involved the drafting of several memoranda to the government on the needs of persons with disability in Malaysia. She is currently the president of Association of Women with Disabilities Malaysia and was a member of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities from the year 2013 to 2016. She was appointed as a senator representing persons with disabilities at the upper house of the Parliament of Malaysia in November 2013 and served the maximum terms, 2 terms until 2019. In June 2020, Madam Padmawati was appointed as a non-executive director in the Board of Directors of Soso Rehabilitation Centre. She is passionate advocate of healthy aging and believes in keeping the body and mind active through sports, exercise, leisure activities, and intellectual work. She is a founder member of Wheelchair Tennis Malaysia and has also represented Malaysia in table tennis at the 5th Asian Para Games in 2009. I think she is the best person to talk about aging with disability. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Madam Padmawati to give her talk on aging with disabilities.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. A very good afternoon to all of you, distinguished guests. Firstly, I would like to thank Malaysian Healthy Aging Society for inviting me to give this talk. I'm really very honored to be here to address on this topic called aging with a disability. Yeah? Could I have the slides, please? Yeah. Aging. What is aging? Well, just the title first, please. Yeah. What is aging? This is a process which nobody can stop. We are all moving forward, yeah, from the time we were born. And aging is something that we have not to be worried about because it is a natural process. And in Malaysia, a person is called an aged person or a senior citizen when he or she attains the age of 60. So from 60 and above, we are called senior citizens. Whereas in some other countries, it is 65. And it differs from country to country. Yeah? Now, I will be first talking about the general situation in any country. Yeah? Of course, every country has got children, teenagers, younger generation, and older generation. And the statistics are actually increasing rather, for persons with for elderly persons. This is because of many, many factors. I think you would have heard in many of the papers presented today about why the elderly citizenship and the population is increasing. And our country would become a country, a senior citizens country, or a country of aged citizens by the year 2030. Okay, next slide please. Next one. I'll be first looking at the challenges faced by elderly persons, and then about policies and legislation, and then I go to my favorite topic, which is sports and recreational activities. Right. When we talk, next slide please. When we talk about challenges, all right, the persons with who are growing old do have ageism and loss of sense of purpose as they grow old. Within a family, you see that an aged person may be a father or a grandfather living with the family, and there is a younger generation because the aged people they belong to the boomers generation, and the millennials, and then the younger generation, and then the millennials, and then you have the Z generation and the alpha. And you notice that most of the roles played by senior citizens, although at one time they were leaders in family and they had courage, they had power, as they grow older, they lose this role. And this is what affects them. And this is something which, many people do not pay much attention to. And this is why, what is going on in their mind. When they give orders, they may have been a leader in their departments, in the private sector, or, running a company. And then suddenly, at an elderly age, and after that, if a person is retired and is at home, nobody wants to listen to him, even within the family. They tend to shelve them, put them on a shelf. The elderly generation, the grandparents. So this is they must have a sense of purpose. So this is something that we have to pay attention, both the community, the government, the family, and the private sector. Yeah. And then they are also people who have got difficulty with everyday task and mobility. And as we know that as we grow older, we'll have a sight problem, a hearing problem, mobility problem, osteoarthritis, and then some of them do get Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, yeah, and dementia also. So these are the things that faces them. And then next challenge is access to healthcare services, whether or not the elderly are given proper healthcare services in the community by the government, and even if they are private sector, and some may be still working at 60 or above 60, yeah, whether they're given the proper care services. And also they'll have a challenge in looking for proper care center. If they need to go to a care center, they need to know which are the places where they can get the best provision to lead an independent and meaningful life. Next slide, please. Yeah, and they also have come across financial insecurity. Government servants may be pensioners, so what they have in hand may be only a pension, and the private sector do not have a pension, and they are at a different level, and they may be undergoing a lot of challenges as well because of financial insecurity, and some of them still want to work after they are 60 years old. And here, while I say that the financial insecurity is there, but sometimes grandparents and the elderly also are looking after their children and also their grandchildren. Sometimes they take them to school, sometimes they buy items for them, and they have dependents who are under them. So the financial insecurity is there even further. Okay, environment. Environment, I mean, accessible place, whether when they move, when they want to go from a place to another place, or they want to go and visit their friends, or they want to go to a recreational park, where they go to a garden, or wherever, they want to go to a shop, they go to a cinema. Accessibility, it must be a barrier-free access to enable them to move about independently. Yeah? Even recreation, whether they want to play games, there are a lot of people who are interested, still in playing games and keeping themselves active. And support services, whether or not they are within a community, the residents association, whether they have any facilities, any activities for the residents who are elderly to spend their time. And also another thing that affects them, challenges are the end of life preparations, like for example, if their property, whom do they have to pass to, and whether or not if they become totally dependent, whether or not they want to stay in their house or whether they have to go to another place. Yeah. So next slide, please. Now I've looked at the overall the global commitment. Yeah. The elderly are getting proper attention from the United Nations itself. Yeah. And we have the as far as persons with disabilities are concerned, we have the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Yeah? So this Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities sets out the legal obligation of states to promote and protect the rights of persons with disabilities in society and in development. It contains a number of articles which highlight the cross-sectionalities of aging and disability. For instance, Article 9, accessibility, which I talked about earlier, Article 9 on accessibility, Article 19 on living independently and being included in the community, Article 20 of the CRPD, personal mobility, and Article 25, health, are just a few examples how the CRPD provides a concrete framework for action which may be of particular interest to the discussions on disabilities and aging. And you see, disability and aging, a person with a disability ages, aging with a disability, whereas the typical person is aging into a disability. That means a person who is not a disabled person does age into disability. So we have kind of two different types of elderly persons here. Here is where I would like all the audience to view a very important video, which I find it very interesting, by one Dr. Morton. Yes, could we have it on, please?
NICPAD has a new focus area in the form of disability and aging. Visit us at nicpad.org to get resources on aging into disability, aging with a disability, and contact us for any information you would like to see around this topic. In this video, learn more about aging with a disability with Dr. Ivan Moulton.
So my name is Ivan Moulton. I am an associate professor here at the University of Washington, and I am a psychologist by training. How you define aging with a disability is pretty challenging because, of course, we're all aging all the way across the lifespan. Some people who have, and I'm going to say a disability, right, which is, I know, a complicated term in itself, have only experienced disability or impairment for a few years. And so they don't think of themselves as aging with a disability, even though they're older adults. We have to make some lines. Did you have a health condition before about age 40 that is now causing some difficulties, impairments, challenges in your physical functioning? And are you over the age of 60? If so, we would describe you as aging with a disability. Some people who are 90 and are experiencing a lot of impairment say, yeah, but it's just because I'm 90 and everybody's experiencing impairment. I don't see myself as aging with disability. Mostly we let people define it for us. The distinction is really about people who are aging into a disability versus those who are aging with a disability. It's a hard line to make, but people who have some new onset of disability kind of after age 65, like a stroke or a fall that results in a brain injury or these kinds of conditions. Those folks just don't have the same background as somebody who's lived their entire life with physical difficulties are associated with disability. We're really trying to separate those two groups because they have some important differences, kind of psychosocially. But where you draw the line is a matter of debate. I mean, the issues when you're talking about aging with a disability of any kind are mostly about the fact that your body has been functioning a certain way for a very long time, and you're going to now start to experience perhaps additional kind of body-related complications. So if you're a person who uses a manual wheelchair and you've been wheeling for 40 years, you might start to develop osteoarthritis of the shoulder. If you're a person who's had a particular posture due to a condition and you've been leaning a certain way for a very long time, you might start to experience some inflammation and some chronic back pain associated with that, which could then contribute to poor sleep, which then can contribute to mood issues and other kind of problems. So it's mostly about kind of the duration of symptoms in that way. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is that as people with disabilities get older, their care networks get older too. People with disabilities have the same aging concerns that everybody else does. They've got to take care of their parents often. They might have to take care of their parents at the same time that they're raising small children, right? So they call that sandwich generation. But they have this additional complexity of that they often require some support, whether that's physical help, all the way up through what we would call caregiving or care partnering help. And as neighbors and friends and family and that informal network starts to get older, that starts to drop away. So people find themselves facing more physical challenges in their health with less support around them. And then there's the other reality that for a lot of people with CP and other conditions, depending on the severity and nature, they may not have had the same work history. We know that people with disabilities, we don't have enough supported employment, in my opinion. So I would describe them as underemployed, which means that when you get to later age and retirement age, there's now suddenly a financial pinch. So it's kind of a perfect storm problem, regardless of the condition that you've got. You've got worsening of what they describe as secondary health conditions, pain, fatigue, spasticity. You've got new health conditions that are emerging just with age, like potentially diabetes, dyslipidemia, these kinds of issues. Then on top of that, you might have a financial strain, and you suddenly find that your care network starts to get smaller. And so it's that kind of combination that puts people who are aging with a disability at risk. And I think that's true really across the diagnoses.
For more information, please visit our website, NCPAD, the National Center on Health, Physical Activity, and Disability, at www.nchpad.org.
And in the last many years, in the year 2008, I had fractured my tibia and fibula just because my leg knocked against a place. And then even in the year 2020, I knocked against the side of my car, and also fractured on my right side, tibia and fibula. So these are the things I've got to be very careful about. Those were the days when I learned how to drive an automatic motorized hand control car. I could easily pull in my light wheelchair. I get into the car first and then pull in my light wheelchair into the seat next to me. And after as the years went by and as I was growing older, I found that it was very difficult for me to pull it in. And that's why I needed the support of someone to take my chair and to put it in the boot. So this is the challenges we with the physical disability face, as we grow older. So we also have to be very careful about not getting other more complicated problems, health problems. We have to be aware. Yeah. And next slide, please. I'm sure most of us would have heard about these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which the United Nations had announced and implemented. And in 2015, the member states of the United Nations have all gave their consent and they committed themselves to carrying out the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And under these SDG goals, there are 17 goals, of which it must be implemented by each and every country in the world. And the principle behind the sustainable development goals is leaving no one behind. And next slide please. The UN on Aging and Disabilities has also come up with guideline, Aging and the SDGs, providing 6 steps to older people's inclusion, and it helps and it supports Help Age Network members and staff using Agenda 2030 to advance older people's rights and inclusion. It sets out 6 key steps for integrating aging and age-inclusive policies into the national development, into the national implementation of Agenda 2030, from understanding the existing SDGs implementation to mapping key advocacy stakeholders and identifying the main influencing opportunities in the SDG process. Now, even in our country, next slide please, in our own country, we find that there is an organization called Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance, which was formed. There are about 50 over CSOs, civil service organizations that, civil society organizations that are members of this CSO SDG. And as CSO SDG is the secretariat for the APPGM SDG. What is the APPGM SDG? Next slide please. It is the All-Party Parliamentary Group Malaysia for Sustainable Development Goals towards mainstreaming SDG issues and solutions of parliamentary constituencies. Now, what this group, the secretariat, the Malaysian CSO SDG has done is so far worked together with all the parliamentarians, in our parliament, both from the Dewan Rakyat as well as the Dewan Negara, whereby in the year 2019, 2020, 10 constituencies were identified, some urban and some rural, whereby this group made sure that they were promoting, localizing the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And they went out into all these communities to meet up with the stakeholders, the residents, vulnerable groups as well. And the vulnerable groups like the Aborigines, the Orang Asli, youth as well as and persons with disabilities, even those who've got migration problem as well. But no focus had been given to the elderly as yet by CSO SDG. So I hope they can take it on as well. And in the year 2021, 20 parliamentary constituencies were given, and in the year 2022, 25 parliamentary constituents will be visited by this CSO SDG Alliance group in order to localize these SDGs. Okay, I think this will be a good, many people, I think even in Penang, in other states, would have heard about this APPGM SDG, whereby we're getting the parliamentarians, ahli-ahli parliament, to be involved in serving their community, to make sure that everybody has a productive and equitable and independent and inclusive life. Okay, next. I would like to look at some government policies and programs, and that action plan, legislation, and also programs and services. Next slide, please. The national policies on aging. There is a policy by under the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development, the National Policy for the Elderly, 1995, and also another policy for older persons, 2011. And then by the government, by the Ministry of Health, on the National Health Policy for Older Persons, 2008, and National Day was also introduced. National Day for Older Persons, which was celebrated since 1992. And next slide, please. Yeah, under the National Policy for Older Persons, there was a policy statement, commitment to create older persons who are independent with dignity, a high sense of self-worth and respected by optimizing their self-potential through a healthy, positive, active, productive and supported aging to lead a life of well-being. So what are the programs that they have? Many would have heard of PAWE. Yeah? Next slide please. Pusat Activity Warga Emas. So this Pusat Activity Warga Emas are not found in all the states at the moment, and only in about 131 in the year 2021, only 143 Pusat Activity Warga Emas were set up in 131 parliamentary constituencies, where a total number of 49,675 seniors have registered. So that is still a very small number. There are many who have not heard of this PAWE, in their area. And the Deputy Minister had recently said that they would like to introduce this PAWE into all the 222 parliamentary constituencies soon. And besides this PAWE, there is also another effort. Next slide, please. The U3A, you all would have heard about it, the University of the Third Age. Malaysia began this in 2007 as a program under the Institute of Gerontology, UPM, to provide lifelong learning courses to Malaysian aged 60 plus. Now here, only those who are interested in continuing their studies, or who are intellectually, want to get a degree and then maybe start a career or do some work, are the ones who are served by this. But when we look at the number of other elderly persons, who are from the middle income group, and from those who are in the rural areas, and then those who are not interested in getting a higher tertiary education for themselves, we have to also make sure that their lives are meaningfully attended to. Their lives are not wasted, that they're not left without anything. So besides, a PAWE should be also introduced, and also they should introduce some other activities to make sure that the elderly persons can benefit as well. Okay, next slide please. There's also the World Global Disability Action Plan 2014 to 2021, whereby there are certain recommendations and programs which are listed there in order to make sure that persons with disabilities and the elderly lives are meaningfully carried out. And the home help services also introduced by the Ministry of, from the Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat, whereby to provide for older persons, provide care for older persons who are living alone. You find that there are some of them living alone at home, where the children or the grandchildren have gone to work, and they have got nothing much to do, and they may be, wandering around the house, or doing a bit of gardening, or they may be lonely and don't know how to spend their time. So this is why these home health services have been introduced, whereby volunteers are sent, the volunteers are given an allowance, are sent to go and visit them. And it's available throughout the country through the partnership of various NGOs. And I think this is quite an important activity as well, which has to be increased. And even under the health Ministry of Health, next slide please, those who are unable to go out to get their health services, the Ministry of Health makes sure that they have perawatan di rumah, domiciliary health, and they go there to check, next slide please. Yeah, they go to the homes to check, where some of them are on feeding tubes, some of them suctioning. They have a medical health problem who are discharged from hospital and who are at home, and to make sure that they have got the proper attention. And also the point of care test, and also wound dressing as well. And here we find that this kind of perawatan di rumah, the home care services, because a lot of elderly people and the families are looking for caregivers. This is the same. It applies for those who are aging with a disability as well. Those who are persons with disabilities who were once active are also confined to the house due to some other problems, and also the all those the elderly who have been aging into a disability, who are like bedridden at home, they need caregivers. So the caregiver industry is one which is, I think, it's a big question. It's a big issue now. Many people are looking for caregivers, and there are certain companies set up for giving caregiver services, and the caregiver services are not cheap. It is not affordable to many families. Those who are financially well off is okay. Their houses will have enough place for them to have their like even as an oxygen tank or a dialysis machine, which can be there, which they can use. But what about the middle income, lower income group? They are living in houses where it is not convenient for them to lead a life in their own house. And sometimes even the family members, the children and the grandchildren who are busy with their own lifestyles, either working or studying, cannot afford to sacrifice their time to look after these elderly persons who are bound at home. So this is where there's a very difficult question between whether or not to send them to a nursing home, to an old folks home where they can be cared. So this is a question where a lot of people think that the onus should be on the family to look after their parents. But because maybe their house, the design, the architecture in the house is not suitable, they cannot bring the parents into the bathroom. The bathroom is not accessible for a wheelchair, and they may be living in an area where they cannot have all the gadgets, no proper electricity supply. So this is an area which the government should pay more attention to provide caregiver services to the elderly who are really in need and who cannot afford the exorbitant sum requested by the companies that are set up. Okay. Next. I would like to look at the act. We have an act which was passed in the year 2008, and it is called the Persons with Disabilities Act, Akta Orang Kurang Upaya. And the act, a lot of people think it is only for persons who are with disability, who have got an OKU card. But you notice that, like what when we watched the video just now, and what I was saying earlier, a lot of the typical persons are also aging with a disability. So within the act, in the act, next slide please, you find that it is there is in section 3, it says that we have a National Council of Persons with Disabilities. This National Council of Persons with Disabilities comprises 10 persons, supposedly 10 persons representing persons with disabilities, and another 10 representatives from the various government ministries, but not all government ministries are represented there at the moment, but 10 like Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Human Resources, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Transport, all are represented there. And the ACTA also has got sections on habilitation and rehabilitation, on in-home residential and other community support services, on access to health, prevention of further occurrence of disabilities, and also availability of health personnel. This is what the Act says that the government is able to provide. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, the meaning of persons with severe disabilities. Yeah, when I was talking about this elderly, who need care. So once you have attained the place of severe disability, Section 39 says that for the purposes of this chapter, persons with severe disabilities means a person suffering from one or more disabilities who are dependent on others for their basic living activities. So this is also something which the government has got an obligation to provide. Next slide, please. Lifelong protection and social support system is in Section 38 of that Act. It says that the government shall provide the necessary lifelong protection and social support system, including ensuring that the welfare of persons with severe disabilities remain unaffected after the death of their parents or their caregivers, or in order to enable the person with severe disabilities to lead a better quality of life. Now, how are we going to get this service? Yeah. Next slide. It says that any non-government organization intending to provide or providing institutional care for persons with severe disabilities or the caregivers for persons with severe disabilities, including the elderly, who are homebound and bedridden, may make an application for an incentive for providing such care to the council. They must apply to the council for providing such, to provide such care in such a form and manner as may be prescribed. And the council may, if satisfied that the application of the NGO or caregivers referred to in subsection 2 should be considered, they grant an incentive as it deems appropriate with the approval of the minister responsible for finance. So these are the channels and these are the areas that are available, which many people are not aware of, So I would urge that people look into the Act and see that, you can apply for a grant to ensure that these services are given. And next slide, we also have a Plan Tindakan OKU, which is ending this year, which was from 2016 to 2022, where all the different ministries had a role to play, leading agencies, and then they had to work with other government ministries in order to make sure that it's a barrier-free environment, to make sure that's accessible transportation, to make sure there's education for all, and then to make sure that many of the requirements as found in the ACTA OKU are implemented. That is why this Plan Tindakan was drafted and was introduced, but the implementation is a big question mark. It is not fully implemented, and now the government is thinking of drawing up another Plan Tindakan, and here I would like to urge that they also look into providing services and the support for the elderly to make sure that they can lead an independent and productive and meaningful life. Yeah. Now there are also other legislation on care facilities which are available. The Care Centres Act 1993, the Private Healthcare Facilities and Services Act 1998, and also the Private Aged Healthcare Facilities and Services Act. Yeah, here we must make sure that it reaches out to all elderly citizens, in Malaysia, not to mention only in urban areas. that they are well looked after. Those who are living in rural areas and also in the kawasan pedalaman, like in Sarawak, in certain areas of Pahang, in Sabah and Sarawak, where the elderly also must be given proper services. Right. One of the things where excuse me. Yeah, one of the important things, besides having proper nutrition, proper health care, proper support services and all that, the sports and recreational activities also provide towards healthy living, and even though a person is becoming elderly, you find that they have to also keep their mind and body active, to make sure that all functions are working. You may have a broken bone, you may have some operations, you may have diabetes, you may have some other program, Alzheimer's or dementia, but then it doesn't mean that you can't go for walks, with accompanied by your family members or by the residents, by some NGOs, by some volunteers. So it is good to keep yourself active in order to lead a life as long as possible. Next, please. I would like to talk about sports and recreation activities. And I'm a person who believes that a person have to be active physically and mentally. Yeah. Next slide. And sports for all. We are also promoting. The government also promoting sports for all. The Ministry of Youth and Sports, and there's also a lot of research on introducing sports for all types of persons. And here, at that time, I was invited for an opening ceremony for this sports for all when I was a senator at that time. And you notice that para archery, and for that event when I attended, can you see some elderly people also seated around, and they are still doing archery. They are still involved in sports. And on that particular day, there were a couple of blind people who came also to learn to do archery. So it does not stop anyone from wanting to do a sporting activity. Yeah? Right, next. This is wheelchair tennis. Wheelchair tennis, the age is not a barrier as well. At any age also you can play wheelchair tennis. Like in my case, I was a tennis player before my accident when I was in the school, and when I was in the university, when I was an able-bodied person, I played tennis for University Malaya as well. And after I became disabled, we met a doctor in University Hospital, and together with another friend of mine, the late Zakaria Musa, we formed Wheelchair Tennis Malaysia, and we started playing tennis on a wheelchair. So that gave us a lot of enthusiasm and interest in also keeping ourselves fit. And wheelchair tennis is one of the activities. Yeah? Next, please. This is boccia. Boccia is for those who are cerebral, those with cerebral palsy. Yeah? So it doesn't mean that this is a young chap who brought back a medal at the Tokyo Games. Young chap. It doesn't mean that as you grow older you cannot play boccia. You can still, even if you're after 60, you can still play boccia if you need to, if you can. Next, please. This is goal ball for the blind. Yeah, this is another sporting activity which can keep you fit as well. And next, para table tennis. Yeah, table tennis. Table tennis is divided into 10 categories. Section from 1 to 5, class 1 to 5 are those who are standing up. We have got physical disability, arm or one leg, for standing up and playing table tennis. Class class 5 to 10 are those who are on wheelchairs playing table tennis. And the person there with the back that's me. I played for the country in the year 2009 when I was 55 years old. So age did not matter to me. Yeah. Next. Yeah. And we got our team got a third prize at the ASEAN, a bronze medal for the ASEAN Games in 2009. Right. Okay. Next. Also, yeah. As I was approached by somebody when I was 62 years old, asked whether would you like to try scuba diving, and I, when I was I'm a person who never learned swimming. When I was much earlier in the year 1980s, 90s, a friend of mine took me to Cheshire Home to teach me how to swim. Although I was on a wheelchair, and he also was on a wheelchair, and I just did the up to the basic treading the water, and also I went to baby pool only, but I never graduated into learning how to swim. But when this scuba diving person, Said Rahman, approached me, I thought to myself, I shall try it, because scuba diving usually go in with a buddy, and it was a wonderful experience going inside. Without my wheelchair, I was able to move, and it really, gave me a lot of enthusiasm and interest, and I did take up a few lessons and just qualified for the basic lessons only. So next please. Right. So in conclusion, let us all put into practice the theme of this year's 10th Malaysian Healthy Aging Society Conference, which is Holistic Healthy Aging. And let us uphold the 10 pillars to living longer, healthier, and better. Okay? Thank you. And doesn't mean that as you're growing older, you no need to have wear makeup and dress up nicely. Yeah? Okay? Thank you. The last slide, please. Yeah. And the last slide, yeah? Yeah. So this is great. Thank you. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Madam Padmawati, for the enlightening and very informative talk. Now we have short time, for a few questions, one or two questions. Is there any question from the floor? We don't have any question from the online. Alright, I'll ask first. Alright, Madam Padmawati, you mentioned about sustainable development goals,
Yeah.
policies, action plans, all those things. In your opinion, how far is the implementation of these policies for elderly with disabilities? I understand that those policies were made for elderly dwelling in the community, but how far is the implementation for elderly with disabilities?
How?
Yes, the implementation.
The implementation, yeah.
Do they getting what they're supposed to get?
Yeah, here it is where the CSO on SDG is supposed to identify, they will go to the constituency and they get in touch with the ahli parliament and the Dewan Undangan Negeri, whoever is there, the local council, the PBT, to ask them, to make sure that they will go and visit them and listen to what are their needs. You have to identify the needs. So this is where I encourage all elderly persons also to go for these meetings. And anyway, I'm also in this CSO SDG as one of the resource persons, and I will bring it up to them, for this year, the 25 constituencies, I'm going to bring it up to them to make sure that they also identify, because when they go to a community, they want them to attend, either, you can in person, or now you can even attend online. Yeah, persons with disabilities as well as the elderly. Because every community, in all the 222 parliamentary constituencies, we have got children, we've got youngsters, we've got adults, we've got the disabled, we've got and the elderly, persons with disabilities as well as the elderly. Every of the 220 constituencies are there. So go to get their needs first. So once the needs are known, then the CSO, the government has already given a grant to make sure that a grant which can be channeled through the CSO on SDG, to give them grant to NGOs. They give 10,000 to have a project. The project like if you want to have like mushroom building, growing mushrooms or doing anything, for the community where they can earn an income. And they're also at a different level, 30,000 is also given to those who have got a longer project, a more important project to do. So these are the things where, although we have got a good organization under the CSO SDG, they have to go out, and now we have to make sure, and now we are going to use the media to announce, to make sure that a lot of people know about it and come and express their needs. What is it that they require? What do the elderly need, in a particular constituency? Okay.
All right, yeah.
So we will definitely be moving forward
So
to
you
make sure that
mentioned
the elderly
about-
needs are looked after. Yeah.
So you mentioned about media. Like for example, for the public and also the healthcare workers like myself, we are not really aware on what are the things available for these elderly in the community. What are the like you mentioned about grants and all.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is the first step, like one step now to be taken to improve the awareness among public and also healthcare providers on awareness on aging with disability? Like one step to take now.
Well, the one step that now, of course, we have to use the media, the mainstream media as well as the social media that's available to make sure that all the programs organized by the government, what is available, reaches them. And a lot of people have got WhatsApp groups, elderly, residential areas, resident associations. And then the information must be from federal to state to the PBT, and the Majlis Daerah and the PBTs, the local authorities, are the ones who are closest to the people. And even in the rural areas, up to the Jawatan Kuasa Ketua Kampung, the information must reach them, and to make sure that they reach out to the people and to let them know this is available. Jangan, if only you know about it, you just tell one person, kawan you aja. Jangan, it shouldn't be like that. It must be, the information must be given through everybody. And social media, Facebook, a lot of people have got a lot of information through Facebook as well. And and even through mainstream media, a lot of people, I don't know how many people still do watch news, on TV or radio or what, most people are always at their handphone, looking at WhatsApp and looking at, a lot of WhatsApp groups are there. So we have to make sure that the information is disseminated in order to make sure that actual stakeholders, the actual people who need the help, get it.
All right. Just one last question, briefly. What were your facilitating factors, your own experience, what were your facilitating factors to age gracefully? To age gracefully, that means elderly with disabilities.
Say again, and the last part I'm not very sure.
So in your own experience, what were the facilitating factors for you to be here now? What was the facilitating factors?
Facilitating factors?
Yes.
For me to be here now. Okay, number one, it starts with my passion. Passion to continue life. You see, because I became a person with a disability at age 21, right? And from an active person, I became a person who cannot walk at all. 2 years later, my mom passed away. And then following year, my dad passed away. So we were left with just siblings. So in my life, it was like, my plea to God is, I did not ask for this. You gave it to me. You give me the strength for me to move forward. Yeah? And we must always remember, God has given us eyes in front of our head so that we look forward. And once in a while, you look at the back to learn from some experiences, to make sure what you're going forward with is useful and very productive. And for me, I am a person, I retired, I took early retirement from after working in the library in the year 2004. And from 2004 until now, I've not retired. And my siblings say that you seem to be more busy now than when you were working. Yeah, so it is a passion in life to help others, to give others, what I know, what I have. And this is what, from one to one to one, it can have a snowballing effect. And everybody, if seorang pass to another person, just like, certain messages, interesting messages, we immediately viral. Let us now viral important messages, yeah? So that is, let us think positively. A lot of people spoke today, think positively, go forward. And everybody's life is valuable, yeah? We must value everybody's life. A person, who can't walk, a person without legs, without hands, his life needs to be valued. Just like how the government values our vote. Remember? Walaupun you tak boleh jalan, walaupun you tak nampak, but your vote is equivalent, a person with a disability, your vote is equivalent in value to the vote of a person who is not disabled. An elderly person's vote is equal to the vote value of the vote of an 18-year-old. It doesn't mean that the country is going to be run only by votes from the younger generation. Ta. Even we, at whichever stage we are, we can contribute.
Okay.
Let us contribute. So that is what
All right,
has brought me here.
Thank you very much for your time and your sharing.